Hello, listeners. I am Eric Savinsky.
I'm Todd Crawford.
We are too cool for the comic shop. And after our recent episode discussing DC Universe movies, Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, we're going to actually continue with our comic book superhero trend. And this time, discussing the two Marvel juggernauts, Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
So to open this episode out, do you want to discuss your relationship with the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Like is a good place to start as any. So I don't really get into the DC Marvel wars too much. I used to think I was passionate about that sort of thing when I was a teenager, and I feel like, just by the virtue of Batman alone, I'm more of a DC guy. But kind of, cut out Batman, and I'm pretty much all around a superhero movie lover, just a superhero lover in general. Not a diehard comic book fan, so I do appreciate when the movies are different from their source materials. But in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in general, I had like average feelings toward it for a while. The first few years of it, some good movies, but I wasn't like, didn't have super strong feelings about any of them in like phase one. And phase two had some of my favorite movies in the genre. Really like Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy. And then they kind of hit out of the park every few movies, and then every other movie in the MCU is kind of average, middle of the run kind of superhero movie. But at the very least, they were always entertaining. And I have seen all of the MCU movies, Iron Man through Spider-Man Far From Home. I've seen 3 phases in completion, which, sometimes was a chore and sometimes was a thrill. So that's kind of my general MCU thoughts.
That's a little closer to mine than I thought it would be, actually. So I haven't seen all the movies, and I don't think I ever have any intention to. I like some of them. I'd say they're like different degrees, kind of like you said. There's like, I would say the mediocre, and then you've got, I guess I could give some examples. Like I'd say the Thor series would be mediocre all around, and then you've got like pretty decent ones. I would say like Ant-Man is pretty decent. It's like a 7.5 out of 10, and I would say those two are basically most of them for me that I've personally seen, where I was totally forgettable to like pretty good. And then you got, I'd say there's really, up until Infinity War, I'd say that I've seen 2 movies I thought were legitimately good, as in like, I would rewatch this, which would be the first Iron Man and the second Captain America movie.
Yeah, which is Winter Soldier. So you and I both like that film quite a bit.
And I would put, sorry.
I was just gonna say that it's pretty fitting that Captain America: Winter Soldier is high quality compared to a lot of the earlier ones, because that's where the Russo brothers first directed in the MCU, and they eventually took the helm of the entire series, basically.
Exactly, yeah, and it was a good choice. I mean, I think Joss Whedon was a smart choice as well, even though I don't really care for him as a director. I think
Joss Whedon was a smart choice early on for the less dark, for the less complicated Avengers movies, I guess.
Yeah, and just to like tie it all together and kind of get like the nerd cred and mainstream appeal.
Yeah, to kind of give you that live action Saturday morning cartoon feeling, because that's always how I describe the first Avengers.
Yeah, I wish he would have gotten a different cinematographer, or just used it differently than like filming and TV aspect ratio and all that. But I still think that regardless of my personal views of him as a director, I think it was a good decision to introduce those that larger universe.
Absolutely, I can agree with that.
So going into Infinity War, it's a weird thing to even discuss going into it, I guess, because I feel like everybody knew what happened before the movie even came out, more so than the average comic book movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of anticipation in terms of it being a cliffhanger movie, and I feel like everybody, worth their superhero salt kind of knew that was going to be. I mean, when you know it's going to be a two-parter, you kind of have to assume things are going to end up a bit rough for the heroes. I mean, it's like Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows was a two-parter, and did anybody think that the first part was going to end on a high note for the heroes? No. It's like if Empire Strikes Back ended on a high note for the heroes before Return of the Jedi, that would seem super odd. So, I mean, that's just kind of the thing when you're, telling a saga-esque narrative in film, especially. Just, I don't know. You kind of know that the villain's going to have to kick the hero's ass, because isn't that like a sort of quote in The Dark Knight? It's like, we love seeing our heroes fall and fail and then get back up. So
Exactly, like Rocky.
Exactly. Rocky should have been in there on the plains of Wakanda.
But what's interesting is that there was I think more so than usual. We were excited to see the Avengers fail. I think because these movies are so formulaic, and the villains are typically kind of mocked for being so forgettable in so many of these movies, with a few exceptions, that it was funny that like everybody was so anxious to see this movie just not do that, just to break that mold a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there was a film in the MCU before Infinity War that actually treated the villain, with such gravitas that they could actually hold more than one movie. I don't think there was any example of that.
Probably
I think
not.
of it.
I'd say like Loki and Thor and Avengers was good. I'd say that Winter Soldier was good in his respective movies.
Yeah, and those characters are more compelling because they evolve roles over time, whereas Loki becomes an anti-hero in a lot of senses, and Winter Soldier becomes a tragic hero. So they evolve past their villain roles, whereas Thanos remains in the villain role for 2 movies.
That's very true, and that's probably the best place to start with this movie is I guess it's not the actual introduction that the MCU has teased for pretty much a whole decade.
Yeah.
How did Thanos live up to his hype for you?
Thanos far surpassed it because I honestly, I don't know, I didn't really have a lot of hype because, as you alluded to, we were teased for a whole decade. It was kind of like this major cock tease, and no one's gonna finish it, right? So seeing him in a tiny scene in Avengers, super tiny shot in Avengers 1, then seeing him a little bit in Guardians of the Galaxy, caricature, I didn't really sense what his character was even about for half a decade. So really, I didn't have a lot of hype. Then when I saw the movie, I was like, oh shit, he's well written and well acted.
Yeah, exactly. Like to me, he just seemed like another typical villain bad guy. It was a CGI creation. It's just that this one, we had seen a prototype version of his render 10 years ago. So I didn't
pretty
have
much.
And then what's so crazy is as soon as he's on screen in Infinity War, he's threatening, he's charismatic, he's interesting, he's compelling.
He's kicking the Hulk's ass.
Yeah, that was pretty great. Actually, one of my few issues with Infinity War is the handling of Hulk. But at that first scene at the beginning, I do really like that.
I totally agree with you there. I think the first scene with Hulk, it's a credit to Thanos' character that, even Hulk is a bitch compared to this guy. And he's not just a powerhouse, he's also super intelligent and thing. So you're like, oh, okay, none of the villains in the MCU have been all of those things at once. We're fucked.
Yeah, and it immediately begins with I think Hemdall's his name, and then
Heimdall, Thor's friend.
I'm sorry, and then Loki, and then he whoops the Hulk's ass. So it's a pretty huge opening to the movie.
It's a very very pressing note too, because you're or picking up right after Thor Ragnarok, which was this fun, bouncy Taika Waititi movie, and then oh yeah, now I really like the opening shot. I like the opening sequences of both of these movies a lot. Actually, I think they're very profound and they feel like art movies for a second. But in Infinity War, it starts off with like a bunch of screams, fading out of the logo, and it feels like you're in this war movie all of a sudden.
Yeah, I really like that. And I really like that at the beginning of this movie, there's like this desperation, like when Hulk is in Doctor Strange's manor and he's like pacing around, and you really get this sense that like things are going to actually get real, and it's not just going to be another giant beam in New York City that's going to be done away with by the end of the movie.
Exactly. There's a sense of dread and stakes in this movie that, yeah, even the other two Avengers movies can't really pull off, because there's just a different tone to those movies where the heroes are going to win and it's not going to take too much effort and no one's really going to die. That's another reason why I think a lot of people don't resonate with Age of Ultron, because Age of Ultron tried to up the stakes, did force a character death at the end of the movie. It all just kind of felt genuine. It didn't really feel like the threat was an all-powerful thing. I think that just goes to the tone of that movie was still kind of locked in place with the original Avengers, but with a different set of directors at the helm, it could really change that this time around.
Yeah, they really changed the tone. And I'm actually kind of an Age of Ultron defender. I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's an absolute mess of a movie, but I think it's pretty entertaining for the most part, even when it's bad.
I actually agree with you. I think I might, because of the high moments, I think I might actually like it more than the original Avengers, because at least takes a couple risks here and there.
I feel exactly the same way. Like, I'm not saying it's a better movie, but it's a more interesting movie. And I'll always give that edge for interest.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, you pretty much know exactly what to expect out of the first Avengers. I think that's why Infinity War and Endgame are so highly regarded, because you truly don't know what to expect. I mean, the broad strokes of snap happening, which has been foreshadowed over multiple movies, getting the half of the universe's population wiped out. When you know it's a two-parter, I mean, you feel that coming, Thanos is accomplishing his mission, but how they do it is the surprising part. The execution of what characters they kill off, how they get them back in the next movie, and just the twists and turns there, the actual interesting parts to me.
And also, I mean, bridging all of these narratives, which for the most part, this is an unpopular opinion, I'm not that impressed by how Marvel does it, because I feel like it's usually pretty simple, the connections they make, especially the comic books laid out for them. I think they don't take that many risks generally, which I understand. They're kids' movies at their core. But like, when you're talking about like connecting like Guardians of the Galaxy to Captain America, there's quite a bit of ground to cover there. And they do it incredibly well, I think, where when it goes from scene to scene, it actually feels fluid. It doesn't feel disjointed at all.
Oh, I hear you. And that's where Infinity War shines the brightest. They basically have the different narratives going on with different casts of characters, but they're all basically trying to pursue the same goal, just a third of that goal. And the way they do that is really good, because some of my favorite blockbuster moments occur when there's different sets of the cast, or three different sets of the cast, and some cases are all doing super important shit. And one of my favorite examples of this is Return of the Jedi. You have Luke and Vader's very intimate duel, and then you have like the space battle outside, and then you have Han and Leia, everybody else on the planet surface. All that stuff goes on at the same time. Infinity War, is that three different casts and three different plots? The entire film, pretty much.
Exactly. It's got this incredible sense of momentum, and just like, even though it's like a 3.5 hour movie, like, you feel the time, of course. It doesn't feel like half an hour, but it goes by so fast, and it's so entertaining for basically every minute of it that you never mind it once.
Yeah, and I think that that constant switching up every minutes or so, another cast really keeps things fresh. So less invested in the Captain America arc. I think that was one criticism that I could potentially agree with of Infinity War, is that Captain America doesn't have a whole lot to do in Infinity War. It is more Iron Man and Thor's story. Thor kind of got shafted in Endgame, so I guess it evens out, and Captain America had more time to shine in that one. So it just kind of impresses me how well they juggle like 30 different characters, honestly, at this point.
For sure, and like matching up different characters and how they interact, like Thor and I can't remember his name anymore. The main guy in Guardians, the guy Peter Quill.
Oh yeah, I almost said Chris Pratt, like thinking that was his real name. Yeah, Peter Quill.
Yeah, like finding those character dynamics and see, and like they had to plan it out. Like, these are things you don't think about unless you're like a director or screenwriter, but like, we need this kind of dynamic for this kind of tone, so we need to put this character with that character so that they can play off each other. It's very much like organizing a band. You're organizing different super groups with this cast, where it's like you have 30 people, you got like 10 drummers, 10 guitar players, 10 vocalists, and you got to mix and match to make good dynamics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and that's pretty much exactly what it's like. I think that's kind of the fan fiction comic book crossover element that, yeah, we kind of got in Avengers, but so early on that basically, you've already established in your head that, like, oh yeah, these six main Avengers always talk to each other. That's whatever. Once you introduce other characters like the Guardians and Spider-Man and a whole bunch of others, then it's like, oh, Doctor Strange, and seeing all of these characters play off of each other, probably the most consistently rewarding part of the movie. Because after you watch it once, the shock value and all that stuff kind of melts away. Seeing those character dynamics play out doesn't really get old for me.
No, I totally agree, and all the actors really are at the peak of their game as these characters, I would say, in this movie. I mean, Endgame too. I'm not discrediting the other, but lumping them both together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And while they are two different movies, they do feel like parts of the same whole. And I would agree with you, because in a lot of cases, I mean, even for Spider-Man at this point, Tom Holland had multiple movies of practice for his role as Spider-Man. Just like Captain America and Iron Man had even more practice with their actors being in those roles. They have so much time to live and breathe in those characters that, unless they were bad actors, you should expect them to be at the top of their game if it's well written.
Definitely, but like with some sequels, you get that thing where the actors get a little too comfortable in the roles as the headliners. And in this one, I think you could really tell that like they knew this was the big moment.
Exactly. Yeah, the directors and the writers were definitely only no one to phone it in.
So past that, this is almost more of an aside, but have you read the Infinity Gauntlet comic?
I haven't read the comic in full. I know various plot elements and things along that nature. Kind of like that was my relationship with the Civil War comic book. I saw the Civil War movie. I later ended up reading the Civil War comic book, and I'm pretty blown away by that. But yeah, no, after watching Infinity War and Endgame, it was such a satisfying story on film. I just never really had a desire to go back to that Infinity Gauntlet comic arc. I knew it was pretty different in some ways. It had some characters that in the movie at all. Thanos' betrayal, both considered good by many people, comic and the movies, is pretty different as well. So I just never really had the desire to go back to that.
That's fair. I wound up finding the comics and I read them probably a year after Endgame came out, I'm at a guess. And it's enjoyable. It's a lot of fun to read in that kind of pulpy Marvel way. Got some really cool artwork, particularly the good Doctor Strange stuff, but it's very different. And I think that the movies do that plotline much better. I would actually compare it to like X-Men Days of Future Past, where like it's a very fun comic with a great concept, but I think the film does the narrative so much more justice than the source material did.
Yeah, that's another movie that I really love, and I think I don't know. Do both of those examples? They feel like I assume that they probably make it feel more real, more dark in the movie versions.
Definitely, like, and I'm not knocking the comics, especially like when they were written and the stylistic trends of that time. But there's definitely a hokiness to it all. There's definitely kind of like a very much so pulpy. Really, the best word I can use to describe it actually is a Marvel-esque approach, which I love and I think is very charming, entertaining. But these felt like true stories on film.
Yeah, no, I feel that too, and definitely a place for the hokiness. And there's a few fandoms that I hold dear to my heart that really celebrate in the hokiness. Comics are hokey, but they're also intimidating because there's so many of them. It's hard to know where to start. So usually I just pick out stories that I think are good or sound good. I consume those, and you have a superior movie version, at least in our opinion. It's like, it's almost like a historical reason to go back and see what the comic had to offer.
For sure, yeah. It's like I would never say not to check out the comics if you're curious, but it's not mandatory. You don't need to. And in my opinion, it's one of those rare cases where I think that the movie's better.
Well, it's in it being not mandatory. It's not like you need base knowledge to be attached to what's going on in Avengers. Watching some of the other movies certainly helps out and definitely gives you some background and attachment, but there's no real comic book knowledge that you need. And like, I feel like Justice League, going back to DC really quick, it did Justice League so quickly for various reasons that you kind of maybe want, it feels like you maybe want some comic book knowledge in there because you just didn't get that several movies worth of build up. Instead, you just kind of got thrown into things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I would say with the DC, you have to read so many behind the scenes articles and you have to follow the production of these movies to piece together what the fuck happened. That you have so much homework, and personally, I am such a fan. I think this gets into like my own filmmaking experience. I'm such a fan of movies with troubled productions. I'm such a fan of movies that maybe were like never filmed and then half the script was repurposed. I just have an affinity for those weird movies that are never fully realized and just have the worst productions ever. But like this, for instance, Infinity War is something where people probably helped out by having been online. I think we take for granted all the articles and all the little memes and stuff leading up to this, basically giving away what to expect. I definitely think it would help to see some of the other movies, but I wonder too sometimes, like, I feel like the narrative is so linear and it's so like simply told, and that's not an insult. That's actually saying it's very well communicated from the filmmakers, that I don't even know if you'd have to watch any of the other movies in order to kind of piece together the basics for this, which is a major compliment.
No, I don't think so. I mean, might have the background knowledge of like, oh, some of these superheroes are famous and I've heard their names. I mean, you really don't have to. I would say you get a more rewarding experience, knowing what certain character relationships have been and what references and plot developments have propelled certain plot developments in these two movies. But I'm pretty sure And I can't really say for myself, 'cause I watched all of these movies. But I'm pretty sure you could just go into this movie, maybe watch Avengers 1 and 2, maybe, and know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you want to get into the final stretch of the movie? I suppose the final battle up until the snap.
Yeah, the final half hour or so of Infinity War's breakneck, and it makes me laugh because there are some of the earlier MCU movies, like Iron Man 2 is a good example, that has I don't know, final battle with the main villain that is pretty much 30 seconds long. Then you fast forward several years until Infinity War, and the final battle with the villain is a half hour. It's 1/5 of the movie's runtime.
That's true. Yeah, even the first Iron Man, I remember people saying it was way too short back when that one came out.
Exactly. And it's it goes to, budgets and the production quality, and we don't have enough money to make a half-hour epic fight. If Obadiah Ironmonger, what the hell's his name, in Iron Man 1 would have had a half-hour fight, it wouldn't have felt earned anyway, because, again, most of these villains in this franchise were pretty weak.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them don't even lend themselves to a huge fight at the end, to be honest. I think a lot of them are much more leisurely movies that just kind of casually tell their story and throw some jokes in there and then wrap up neatly. I don't think a lot of them warrant it, or it would, like you said, it'd feel out of place and unearned. This one, I was almost disappointed at the beginning of it. So they go to Wakanda, and then they have the typical thing where there's 100 essentially just nondescript generic villains they have to kill and fight a bunch of things at once. And I was like, okay, here we go again. I don't love it, but the movie's good. I'll deal with it.
Yeah, I hear you. Because whenever I think about the final battle of this movie, I think about that Wakanda part after I think about the battle between Iron Man and Peter Quill and Spider-Man, Doctor Strange and the Guardians with Thanos on Titan. I think that is what people think of when they think about the final battle.
Exactly. It's a fake out. You see all those little monster things. And it kind of reminds me of Phantom Menace, actually, because they're in this big bubble that protects them.
Yeah, that's very true. And they are on the plains, and I guess Thanos is Darth Maul then.
Yeah, and then like you said, there's that other climax going on that is definitely much more interesting. And yeah, I forgot about that because I was thinking, doesn't an Avenger die in this? And I forgot Gamora gets killed.
Yes, I know. It's sometimes, I think, retroactively, we can forget that happened because we know how that gets resolved in Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, and that's some of those powerful stuff in the movie is her interaction with Quill, and then his reaction to all that. The scene, one of the most provocative scenes of the film, I would say, is when he goes to shoot Thanos, but then the gun just shoots out bubbles. That's such a comic book image to me.
Totally is, and it really does a service to Thanos is mocking the heroes, but also somewhat respecting them at the same time. And the dynamic that Thanos has with Gamora and therefore the Guardians is really what helps tie the emotional core of this movie together. So I would almost say that the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are more important background than the Avengers movies, the other two, in a sense.
Yeah, I think there's a solid argument there. So, in the climax, yeah, they're going to take the glove off of Thanos, and then Peter Quill finds out that he killed Gamora, and he fucks it all up for him, basically, and then the snap happens. It's at that moment, isn't it? Or no, it's not, because he still has to get it from the robot guy.
Yeah, good old Vision.
Yeah, Vision, that's it. I thought his name was Windows.
Same thing, close enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say Windows. Like, I know that's not it because that's what I'm running my
Windows
computer
10?
on.
Is it Windows 10 or Windows 7? I can't remember.
So,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. Like, Vision's death in this is kind of like overly cruel when you think about it, because Scarlet Witch has to kill him. It's kind of a mercy killing, but then Thanos just brings him back just to kill him again.
Yeah. And I was never super connected to Vision as a character, however. So it just kind of makes me laugh at how cruel it is. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if the creators thought that we would care so much about Vision that watching him die twice was ripping our heart out, or it's just like cruel for cruelty's sake, just to show that Thanos is cruel, which I think it's the latter.
Yeah, I mean, I like Vision well. He's cool. I think Paul Bettany's good in the role, but he's definitely not like my favorite when I think of the movies.
No. That's I feel like that about Paul Bettany's characters a lot. He was the villain in the Han Solo movie as well, and I thought he did a good job. But it's also like I also just don't care for some reason.
So, but where the movie's really shining, and this kind of goes in climax as well, maybe a little bit before then, as I recall, is when Thor is making a huge axe.
Yeah, it's all happening around the same time as like the preparation for the final battle, and doing that is just super epic Norse fantasy bullshit. And then seeing him arrive into the Wakanda battle really brings the Wakanda scene up a notch for sure.
Exactly, and when he hits Thanos with the axe, like it's pretty grisly for a comic book movie.
Yeah, it is. I remembered. I actually, in that one moment, like I remembered thinking, like, "Oh shit, I don't actually know what's happening right now. Like, did we kill him? Did we do it? You know, you think you're going to see everybody perish and whatever, but for a brief moment, you're like, "Oh shit, did we score victory after all?" But then that famous line comes in, and then we're all fucked.
Yeah, and I almost actually going into some of my thoughts on Endgame. I almost wish that might have been the way it would have went down. That would have been interesting if he just died immediately after. That would have been one way to do it. But anyhow, sticking with this movie, how do you feel about basically only the original Avengers surviving the snap?
And my boy Rocket.
True, can't leave him out.
No, I think it's fitting. I instantly felt like, oh, this feels right. Yes, it's a little cheesy, but I feel like part of the marketing going into the last one is that now it's reliant on our original heroes, and we're gonna see how they deal with things. I think it's impactful not just in setting up the next movie, also seeing the characters that you've known the longest in the franchise, seeing them all react to characters they met later on, die in front of them.
That's true, and like it is kind of like when I first knew about it, because I saw the movie I saw the day after it came. I saw it really soon, but it was still of course spoiled on Facebook and everywhere like the day of, and I'm never careful about that stuff because I forget that it comes out in other countries or whatever. And
Yeah.
And when I heard it was the original Avengers, I was like, okay, I mean that's kind of corny, but whatever. And I definitely think for the emotional impact, like you said, especially in Endgame, you needed it to be them. A part of me wonders if even just one of them would have been whisked away, if that would have been more interesting, but it worked out for the best.
Yeah, I think it worked out because Avengers Endgame was no slouch in the writing, and they gave all 6 original Avengers something major to do. I mean, even some of the Avengers that I thought were not handled well in previous movies, like Hawkeye and Hulk, really had their best moments in Avengers Endgame. So, when I think about stuff like that, I'm like, well, I guess it's good that they, go with those original 6.
Exactly. Completely agreed. So,
Before we move on to Avengers Endgame, what would you what rating would you give Infinity War? I guess it's kind of a hard movie to rate because there's not really many movies, quite like it.
Yeah, it's a really hard one. I'm kind of stuck between like a 2 or a 3 out of 10. No, no, I go back and forth like 8.5 or 9 out of 10. Because I think when it's like at its best, it's like a 9.5 out of 10. But there are some moments, there's small moments that just don't gel with me, like particularly like with Drax thinking is invisible or whatever, and just minor things like that. That's just like, what's this doing in this otherwise very well-made movie?
Dude, man, I hear you, but also Drax cracks me the hell up. I think he has my favorite joke in the movie, where they're all asking like, "Who are you?" and there's Gamora and blah blah blah, and he's just ruining the dramatic tension of the scene, like asking why is Gamora and dumb shit like this.
No, that was a good one.
I love Drax so much. Oh man, have you ever seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2?
I have, and I'd really like to because I hear interesting things about it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of 2 as well. I feel like they make Drax dumber in every movie he's in, and I'm all here for it actually. But I kind of agree with you, and I think that some of the scenes that I don't know, this is like a 3-hour movie. I feel like there are some scenes of exposition that kind of bog the movie down that keep it from being a perfect 10 out of 10. Like, I think there's a scene Captain America and some of the people from Wakanda are just like talking in a room for 5 minutes, and they're like, "Yeah, I get the stone out of his head, and blah blah blah. How are you gonna get the stone out of his head? You do special surgery and shit." And it's just like, oh my god, I don't care. Like, shut up, move on.
True, and like it is that thing, like you said though, where it is like a 3.5 hour movie, where it's like, if there is like maybe, I don't think I'd have this long, but we'll say out of 3 hours, there's like 10 minutes of stuff that's not ideal. That's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah, no, it's still a fantastic ratio. Off. There's just a couple Marvel trappings that I get tired of, and especially when it's like the 18th damn movie in the franchise, and those trappings are still there. Like, swear to God, dude, almost every MCU movie has a scene or two. They try to discuss the fake science of whatever superpower or whatever technology that they're dealing with. Every time I groan out loud, it's honestly remarkable if you like watch them all. Because if you watch them all, truly see like what flaws are in almost every movie, and it's amazing.
That's why I can't watch all of them.
I hear you. That's why I take the sacrifice. That's why I am the Dark Knight. My brother and I, we did watch all of the movies for Endgame last year, 2019.
That's
it was
fun.
a damn journey. It was a journey, but it was like a family bonding experience for him and I too. We just got to. The movie was good. We got to gush about it. The movie was like mediocre. We got to shit on it the whole time. So it works out.
All right. So do you want to get into that one then?
But yeah. Oh yeah. I guess I never gave Infinity War a score either. I guess I would give it a 9 out of 10 as well. Definitely a solid, almost perfect. But hesitate to grade any super long movie perfect unless everything in it just had to be there, which is almost the case, like you said. But yeah,
it's so close.
Yeah, and at the same time, you also have to like, give merit where credit is due. This movie is like a miracle, and it's remarkable that it even exists anyway. And if like superheroes are your thing, well, this movie's gonna blow your socks off, whatever fucking objective score you think it should get anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not even the target audience for something like it, and I still really enjoy it. I kind of just saw it out of curiosity, but I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I hear you. But yeah, going into Avengers Endgame, I want to start off this discussion because I love the opening to this movie so much, and you might think I'm talking about the Hawkeye stuff, which I kind of am. It's a really clever idea to open it up with Hawkeye when we didn't see him in the last movie, to see his family go just away. But what I really love is just like thunder that closes out that scene. Then the band's name, that song "Dear Mr. Fantasy" starts playing, and it's like an interlude song that actually puts us in the setting of the Guardians ship, which makes perfect sense. Just the song choice is fantastic. It's just kind of like this commentary about what these movies mean to people and like high fantasy like does and reflecting our emotions and shit like that. And it's just, I don't know, that song choice fucking, I already was like blown away just by a old 70s song that they chose to put in the movie.
I feel bad because I remember the Hawkeye opening. I don't remember the song choice.
Well, you gotta look that shit up when you get off this call. Maybe you should edit it in like right in the middle of the video. Pretend we have like an audio ad, Mr.
So yeah, I think the movie begins very, very strong, and like you said, puts you into that world. I will say one thing I wish they did. I get why they didn't, but I wish they did. I wish that they would have done an entire phase of movies with 50% of the population gone.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. I wonder if they'll ever go back with like these TV shows and shit that they're making, like stuff like that in that time period, because they could always go back and do that. That would be somewhat compelling.
Yeah, you could do a show where it's like 50% of the population's gone. It doesn't even have to be superheroes. It's just about people, where it's like, yeah, everybody's gone. What do we do?
Yeah, but it also might just feel like everybody's indoors. It might feel like coronavirus a superhero show, so they might not.
Oh, that's true, yeah. So, I really like, speaking of that kind of, I really like Captain America doing this like support group where he's talking to people. I thought that was very true to his character.
Did, and I feel like it's a vulnerable side of his character that I don't think a lot of people would have written that way. But the Russos and Stephen McFeely really know how to write Captain America very well, and they do. We get our ounce of, when I say ounce, I mean literal ounce of gay representation in a blockbuster, but that is technically in there.
Yeah, he's like, I forget. I remember the scene because like it's they try to like subtly throw it in there, but it's just kind of like noticeably put in there so it can be a reference. Yep. Where he's like, yeah, well, when my partner was taken away, who was a man, exactly. A gay man that I love, and that's okay. I was very sad about it, and I don't know what to do with my life.
Well, it's especially not subtle. Most people won't even realize this. Moviegoers like you and I do. Especially not subtle when the guy who is saying it is one of the two directors.
I didn't actually know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I knew that instantly, so I was like,
That's funny.
I guess that's like, I don't know, what would you call it? That's like one of the directors grandstanding to appease the gay crowd, I guess. Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's nice that it's in there, but at the same time, it's so little where it's like, congratulations, you guys get a cookie. Like, fuck off. I keep waiting for my blockbuster to have like a full-on romance with like two of the main characters, and they don't make a big fucking deal about it.
Well, that is the thing. Especially with Disney, is like they pat themselves on the back for it. It always feels like, and that's what pisses me off. Exactly,
that's what pisses me off as a person in the LGBTQ community. Is like, would it really be that hard to just put like a main character, not this fucking side character, not this like animated monster cop who appears in Onward for 2 seconds? Like, that's cute, but you're also making it. Also, in their marketing and shit, like, I don't know, they make it appear like they really care. It's like, I don't know, if you really care, wouldn't you, like, get it into the movie more than just, like, gettable seconds? I don't know. It always pisses me off. But maybe in 2030 we'll get that.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, I always think about Finding Dory. I think was the first one I remember. And it was a big deal because there's a lesbian couple in it. And like when you watch a movie,
like literally 2 seconds,
you don't even like notice
on a baby stroller or something.
Yeah.
I guess we were supposed to worship Pixar for that one. Anyway, I'm getting too jaded. This is not what this movie is about. But I always find that funny. But yeah, that also means Captain America sports the gays. So I guess you can extrapolate that.
That is true. I always wondered, like, with those kind of issues, and this is a valid question. Then they kind of bring it up in the first Avengers, like where he mentions God and he says something like, "There's only one God, he doesn't look like that," in reference to Thor. He would have some pretty backwards views to that.
I mean, you would think so, dude. Maybe they just fucking, I don't know. Maybe he just talked with Bruce Banner and Stark, and if you talk with those guys long enough, you just become liberal. Maybe that's what happened.
Yeah, I like to think that between the movies there was like some re-education where like Cap would say something and they'd be like,
"Whoa, we don't say that anymore, Cap. That's a few decades out of line."
He walks up to some poor lady like, "Not at my water fountain, ma'am," and they have to pull him aside and explain.
Holy fucking shit! I feel like they subtly work it in because, like, at the beginning of Winter Soldier, you know, he's palling around with Falcon. You know.
Oh yeah, and Falcon's great. He's such a great
he's a colored man. So he was cool with it from the beginning.
So anyhow, aside from Captain America's reform bigotry,
yeah, I would kill for bloopers like those. But actually, going seriously into his character really quick, because we'll be talking about his character this discussion about this movie anyway. I feel like they really get to the core of his character, and you know, since he knows what it's like to be the minority in a way, and I don't mean like graphically, because he is a white male, probably about as white male as you could get. But you know, he knows what it's like to be excluded and picked on and left out and that kind of shit. So I feel like actually the progression of his character with all people is like pretty understandable, and they do that because the first act they're all just kind of like grappling with like, oh, what the hell should we do? You know, this is what we picking up the pieces. Like at the start of the movie, they don't have a plan, like go get revenge or get everybody back. Just trying to like the best they can, and actually content with that. Much.
Yeah, I really love the beginning of the movie. I like what you said. I love how despondent it is, how confused the characters are with the situation. There's a scene between Rocket and Black Widow where she says something about it. You know, it's all she has. Kind of running this program, trying to. I don't even remember what it is. She's doing some superhero shit, and and that probably for me is actually by far my favorite. Just the world building. And just showing how all these people have adapted to this new way of life.
Absolutely. They do a really good job of doing that, and they spend a good quality chunk of time in living in this world now. Yeah, so sometimes the movie's a little fuzzy too, because I think, you know, they're kind of accepting their lot in life, because this is the 5 years later period. Actually, before all the stuff that we've been talking about, do go for Thanos like pretty much immediately, because they sense where he went off to.
Oh yeah. Okay, so like yeah, I got the movie muddled too.
Yeah, which is funny because I watched it like months ago last time, but I think it all happened so fast that you don't really realize that. Like they rescue Iron Man with Captain Marvel, and then they get their plan together pretty much immediately after that.
That's right. I always thought that happened, like, I don't know why I thought that he doesn't come back until after the 5-year jump. I actually have a lot of issues with that beginning part then. I like the stuff with him on the spaceship, with Nebula and all that, but like I think Captain Marvel doesn't really have any chemistry with the rest of the Avengers, and it's just kind of like weird and out of place. And I like Brie Larson a lot as an actress. It's just, she just sticks out like a sore thumb for some reason. Maybe because she's not like in 8 other movies like these other guys are, but like it just comes off kind of wooden and awkward to me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like her character is to adapt from comics to the screen. I feel like she was not written well. They kind of rely on her movie coming out the same year, a couple months before Endgame, to kind of get you excited about her. Spoilers, I hate her movie as well. It might be the weakest movie in the entire MCU, just being honest. I do like Brie Larson as an actress, and there's some other movies of hers that actually, are on my bucket list of seeing at the moment. But Captain Marvel, the character, is poorly written and poorly integrated in the cast. I absolutely agree. And when she skedaddles, she is happily seeing her gone. Not in the movie a lot, thankfully. So she doesn't ruin a lot. And no, it is a shame. It's just a poorly matched character, and it's just underutilized.
Well, before I forget, because I know I will, I do like when she comes back at the second half of the movie. I actually like her. When she has that scene with Spider-Man, that everybody talks about, she's like, "Do you have something for me, Parker?" Or whatever she says, and she's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, it's weird. Her character is just weird. She can be super serious, and then she can be kind of snarky. I don't know where her character lies. It's like there's two alter egos of Captain Marvel. Her character just doesn't seem like organically moving from serious to comical. And most of the other Avengers get that right. Take Iron Man, for instance. He's wisecracking asshole, but sometimes he's serious. I can totally buy that. But for some reason, Captain Marvel doesn't work. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it a lot, looking at it just structurally in terms of writing and all that. I think it boils down to she's a woman.
Yeah, instead of writing an actual freaking character. And that's a problem that the MCU has with women in general. And nothing comes off as more tone deaf as another half-hearted pat on their own back of acceptance. Not to skip to the final battle for long, but we're all women, and there's 15 female superheroes marching together. How did that make you feel? Did you not feel jaded by that?
Here's my thing with it. I heard about the controversy of it, and it's corny, it's lame, it's not powerful, and it's only 3 seconds. So it's kind of goofy as it is, and it does take me out of the movie where it is it's almost like product placement in a way.
Yeah, I mean, they completely orchestrating all those characters just stand up together. Just feels, I don't know. You can be more empowering by just showing all 10 of those characters separately in different scenes kicking ass. They don't need to line up and run together. It's just
you could do a montage of each of the girls doing something and actually being useful instead of just posing while all the men are fighting.
Yeah. Again, Disney and every it's whatever. Anyway, what the hell were we talking about? Yeah, Captain Marvel sucks. I guess we can move on.
One last note on Captain Marvel, but then I'll leave it alone. It's so jarring because you have Black Widow, who's a phenomenal female character, and Nebula, who's also a great female character in the same scene. And it's just it's just the character. It's just not properly. They didn't tweak it enough. I feel like it's undercooked.
I agree. Well, and they're trying to tote Captain Marvel as a main character for some reason now. Black Widow and Nebula are well written, thought out, supporting characters that grow over time. Whereas Captain Marvel is underwritten, and also they try to make her a main character as her own freaking movie. So if the time that characters needed, they didn't get, and Captain Marvel's poster child of that.
Yeah, I don't know. So, anyhow, moving on. So then they kill off Thanos in a very anticlimactic way. How do you feel about that, particularly?
I actually like that quite a bit. It's a subversion that I don't think people expected that one. And just because it's a subversion doesn't make it good. Why I think it's good, because it really propels all of our lead characters on their character arc for this movie. So, I mean, they have to fail. Obviously they failed in Infinity War, but what happens at the beginning of Endgame is kind of more of a slam the door in your face. You don't even get vengeance. You don't even get to avenge people this time. They're called the Avengers. them not being able to avenge anybody because Thanos' deed can't be undone, and then he just unceremoniously gets rage killed by Thor. I think that's beautiful. I mean, honestly, when he like walked away with his cape flowing in the camera, I was like, shit, that's some biblical shit right there. I really, really enjoy that.
That's a good point. Like, I'm conflicted on it. I go back and forth on it a lot because on one hand, I want Thanos, with his experience, with the knowledge he's gained throughout the last movie, and at peak physicality, to fight the Avengers at the end. I mean, that's just, typical narrative structure. So I want that as an audience member. And the fact that you don't get that is unsatisfying in the way they want it to be. And it's more interesting and it's a bigger risk than what I want in movies, especially a Marvel movie. Usually you want them to take a risk that they don't. And in this one, they actually took a risk that I think might have been too far. In some ways it pays off and in other ways it doesn't. But it's a very bold decision. I respect them for doing that.
Yeah, I actually think it works because if Thanos was just gone from the rest of the movie, I feel like it could have been a missed opportunity. We get an old, less wise version of Thanos becoming villain again anyway. So, and I like the foil of Thanos in this movie, whereas I don't know. Thanos, when Thor kills him in his little hut on planet whatever, I don't know. He doesn't give a shit. He's battered and bruised because he exploded the stones, which I think left him very physically crippled, which is why he doesn't put up a fight at the beginning of this movie. Then B, like, I don't know, he did what he felt like he had to do for the universe, and family hates him or is dead. I don't know. Like he just doesn't give a shit. So I think that kind of a villain being resigned to his demise is very impactful. And you compare that to his demise at the end of the movie, a past time where he had less character growth, and he's just so fucking pissed and this is truly the end of everything I wanted. It sucks. You can just see it in his mournful expression when he turns into dust. There's just a really great comparison there. And I think that's why it works for me.
No, I think you're totally right. And another thing I have to consider too, thinking logically, is Thanos gets hit with an axe at the end of the last movie and badly burned, and we're also the threat of the Chaos Emeralds in this movie. So that's an important factor as well. I did that on purpose, but
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like he's down for the count, and if all the heroes are going to team up on him, a dude who got stabbed in the chest with an axe and then also suffered like a Chaos Emerald explosion on his half of his body. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be too terribly hard to beat. But
I'd love to see.
Now we're getting into like death battle statistics and shit, like who would win, blah blah blah.
I'd love to see like a very nondescript Wikipedia thing on it, like a lazy plot synopsis to say, at the beginning of the movie, the Avengers team up to behead an old crippled man living on a farm.
This is technically what happens. Yeah, and then I did not see 5 years passed. That fucking sucked when that text appeared on the screen. Because you knew that Avengers Endgame, everything would get turned back to normal. You knew there'd be movies after this. You knew everybody was going to come back to life. How do you make it feel like Infinity War had consequences? You just do a 5-year time jump and make everybody feel like shit. No, that's actually more effective than I thought it would be.
Yeah, well, and that is the thing is like, everything's going to get back to normal, so they have to make it feel impactful, and they have to make it resonate with you in the moment. And it's kind of like we talked about Toy Story 3 and the incinerator scene. I actually think the way that they draw it out in Endgame is very similar with the depopulation, where everything's going to be okay ultimately, but they show you the struggle of getting to that point so well that it's just as impactful.
Exactly. Yeah, and as long as you see that struggle, you feel like, okay, it wasn't just a cheap shot in Infinity War. They're actually taking us on an emotional journey, and as long as they can effectively do that, okay with it. So that's basically just the depressing first act of the movie. Really curious to know what your thoughts are on the crazy fan service time travel second act.
Mixed. So I'm going to start off with, this is one of my more serious problems with the film start to arise. The first thing is I hate what they do to Thor. I think that like he as a character is like peaking in the last movie, and I get the joke that he's over the hill, that he's fat and all that, and the depression stuff, but it's just so farcical and ruins for me what was like in the last movie arguably the most interesting character of the Avengers lot. So I really don't like that reveal.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with you there. I've seen numerous videos of Thor fans like they either love what they did, they thought it was super deep and unexpected, or they hated what they did with Thor and kind of did what you said and made him a joke. I'm kind of lukewarm to it. He has some like funny jokes, and I think some of the funniest jokes come from like, oh, he references that Jane, Natalie Portman's character, was like a character who existed, and then everybody's just kind of like, and he's like, and then he just kind of spaces out, which kind of is like a commentary on the entire Thor trilogy in a way.
Yeah, like but, I feel like there's just a middle ground they could have done with it. They didn't need to go like full SNL fat suit with it.
I mean, like you can start off SNL fat suit, I guess, but I don't know. You get like almost 2 hours into this movie, and he's still acting like a wimp, kind of. And I don't know. On the flip side, he obviously has like depression and shit, but is that depression taken seriously, or is it made to be a joke? I don't know. Certain scenes you could say is taken seriously, like with Rene Russo being his mom. And in other scenes with Rocket slapping his ass around, you could say it's a joke. And it's just like, I don't know. It's obviously probably the most controversial part of this movie, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, this scene with his mom is a really great scene. But he looks like a goddamn, like, sketch show, comedy show character or something. Like Eddie Murphy and Norbit or something. And you're supposed to be emotional, but it's just so out there and silly that there's just that thing where it's like, I just can't connect as much as I want to, because they just went too far with the joke.
Then part of that kind of gets to the tone deafness of the movie, because I've heard people argue that, oh, they're trying to say that even if you're fat, you can kick ass and be a hero, and it doesn't matter what you look like. I don't know. Wouldn't you make him more realistically fat if that was the message you're trying to portray? Like, he's just so cartoonishly, like, ripped in all the other movies, and now he's like basically obese and like slob, and I don't know. Could have handled it a little more delicately, but we're pretty much on the same page on Thor.
At least Chris Hemsworth's always great, so
yeah, without his delivery on some of the joke lines, like, it would fall completely flat.
Yeah, like, I gotta give him credit as a comedic actor, as an actor in general, that he has that range. That like a pretty boy that's always chiseled, this Adonis body, can then just do that kind of role. And even though I don't like what they do with him, he still has that charisma.
Know what you will about the Thor character in movies in the MCU, like, take him for a damn ride, and Chris Hemsworth shows some range. I mean, you like look at Thor Ragnarok Thor, and then like Infinity War Thor, just a lot of material that you're getting.
On the flip side, though, I actually really like what they do with Hulk.
Yeah, I've never been a crazy Hulk guy in the MCU. I love Hulk as a concept and a character, but, you know, Mark Ruffalo has just kind of been there majority of the time in the MCU. They actually found some clever ways to, may have hastily done it. They found some clever ways to use his character, like doing the Professor Hulk mishmash. Makes a lot of sense. Then, you know, him being the person to make that snap, it makes a lot of sense. It's some poetic justice to it. So I can get behind a couple of those elements, but it's still by no means my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say is maybe for me it was relativity in the sense that it's better than Mark Ruffalo putting his little head out of the CGI Hulkbuster in the last movie with these horrible erectile dysfunction jokes.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're comparing it to Infinity War's absolute botchment of his character, then yeah, absolutely an improvement there.
Yes, that might be where I'm coming from a little bit more, where I was just pleasantly surprised because he was, and I like Mark Ruffalo, he's cool. I like him in movies. I like him as Hulk well enough. Not my favorite, like you said, but then in Infinity War, he was like the worst part about the movie by far. So to actually enjoy his arc in this was very welcome to me.
Yeah, no, I was kind of surprised too at how much I actually was okay with it. Honestly, this is Iron Man's movie and Captain America's movie, and they do not disappoint with either of those characters, at least for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And Avengers has always been their series. At the core of it, I feel like they're different conflicts and struggles.
Absolutely. So I guess getting into the time travel stuff, a lot of it is funny. You know, America's ass and all those other things that happen, and Tony like going into cardiac arrest and all that dumb shit. But you know, they get a lot of the jokes and a lot of the fan service out of the way in the first part of the second act. And then you get to the emotional stuff, and then they go back to that base in New Jersey, and simultaneously Captain America has some emotional moments where he's stalking Peggy, and then Iron Man's talking to his dad.
Yeah, the idea of time travel to solve it, I was never on board for, but like, it's done well enough. It's not my favorite stuff, but it's serviceable. But
yeah, pretty much how I heard about the time travel microscopic bullshit. Want to know how I found out that was in the movie?
How?
The Avengers Endgame Legos spoiled that before the movie came out.
That's funny. It's always a Lego and toy sets that spoil movies. And it's so funny because
I know
half the time,
pretty fucking funny because they were all in their suits and shit. And then I think the suits like had a name. It was like blah blah armor, Tony Stark, blah blah. And I'm like, oh, okay.
I remember that. Yeah, it's so funny because like sometimes those toy sets have nothing to do with the movie at all. Where it'll be like Avengers fight Green Goblin in space, and then sometimes it just tells you what happens at the end of the movie.
So that was kind of funny. Yeah, it's like when you hear about the idea on paper, like time traveling to recover the stone, it sounds kind of stupid. That's how I felt before I watched the movie. But then when I was in the movie, it was just like a roller coaster. Everybody was, I mean, I saw this opening night, by the way. It was just hilarious, laughter, cheering, like every few minutes. Like, man, it was like an amusement park ride. And I was just like, it was so stupid at certain points, you know, specifically them visiting past climaxes of other movies. It just got so absurd that I was in quite a few parts, so I was pretty much on board with it. And then using time travel as an excuse to have some emotional storytelling, you know, I was like, all right, I guess you earned this crazy bullshit that you're doing. But seriously, Avengers Endgame goes full comic book bullshit in the movie, for better or worse.
That's a good way to look at it. And like, even though I have my reservations about it, it is entertaining. It is fun. They do have good jokes. You know, when they go back to New York to visit, or like we talked about with Thor 2 and Thor's mom, going back to Guardians, and that's how we get Thanos back. And also you think, like, what else are they supposed to do at that point other than just go back in time? Because everything's so fucked that where else is there to go but back?
Yeah, I was going to bring that point up too. Like, without the time travel mechanics and all that stuff and the celebration of the series as a whole, what's the alternative? It's like moving around until we can find some other MacGuffin to like bring the stones back. Oh, I mean, honestly, this is more creative than that, so I'll take it.
Yeah, and yeah, especially with it being like the end to the first, I don't know what you want to call it, because it's 3 phases. The first era, we'll say, of
Yeah,
MCU. It feels kind of appropriate. That it was like almost an anniversary kind of special.
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. I mean, if you're a fan, not everybody is a critic. If you're a fan, let's be honest, you were probably pretty fucking pleased with yourself in that middle chunk of the movie.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Is like I definitely don't identify as a fan. Like I enjoy some of the movies, but I really have no commitment to the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, this is the end of a 22 movie arc. Like, this movie is for the fans, first and foremost. That's for damn sure.
So yeah, once it gets to the fourth, though, I really like that scene with Tony and his dad, and and Captain America seeing Peggy. Of course, building towards the end of the film. And so, do you want to discuss the events where they kill off and how they go about that and everything?
Yeah, because, you get the Tony stuff, and then they're kind of building you up for another emotional down. And I thought it was really good. The Hawkeye Black Widow dynamic. I think seeing it play out in the films a bit more than we actually get in the 11, 12 years, however long it is, would have been cool. But the actors are doing a pretty good job. Honestly, I cared more about Hawkeye and Black Widow Avengers Endgame than I ever did in any of the past movies. So they did a good job with material that they had. And I thought it was fitting. Just from a character perspective, like, of course, Natasha is going to be the one to finally bite that bullet, because her entire existence in these past couple movies has been kind of trying to find that purpose, in a fog of desperation and despair and all that shit. Whereas, I don't know, Hawkeye's character had something to live for, obviously went down a fairly dark path, which would be interesting to see them explore more, and just gets away with what he was living after Avengers Endgame. We don't know. But no, it felt right to me.
Yeah, I agree. What I wanted to talk about this scene particularly is the tone of it is so strange, and that's a positive thing because it's at once absurd. So they're both fighting with each other, shooting at each other, kicking and punching each other, so that one of them can
like visually,
kill
it's almost
themselves.
comedic. Visually, it's almost comedic.
Yeah,
Emotionally,
exactly.
like, holy shit.
It's slapstick, but it's also emotional because they care so much about each other, and each of them wants to die to protect the other. But it's silly.
Yeah, no. Kudos for pulling it off, because it somehow works.
Yeah, like if I was in that writer's room and I was hearing this, like it's going to be like the emotional peak of the movie at this point in it, and they're going to be like fighting each other to kill themselves to jump off the cliff, and it'll be really kind of funny but yet sad. I would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's never going to work. And then I'm watching the movie like, oh, this works really well.
Somewhat concerned.
I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they even thought of it, but it works.
It does work. Also, by the way, ever since like 2011 or whatever, when Red Skull disappeared at the end of the first Captain America movie, I called it. I knew that fucker was still alive. Seeing him appear in Infinity War and Endgame was just super gratifying. Because I called that. I didn't know when he was going to show up again. I just knew he would, and it made me happy that I was right.
I'm glad too. I think Captain America is really the only one that I consistently enjoy with all the MCU movies, and even though I like the first Captain America, it's the weakest of the trilogy, I'd say. And Red Skull, unfortunately, despite being such a great comic book villain, doesn't have as much to do. So it's really great to see him come back. And I think it's Hugo Weaving playing the character to get another shot at the role.
Yeah, I think they may have actually switched the actor just for a second. He was in it so little the last two, but I don't know 100% for sure. He was definitely Hugo Weaving in the first one, but yeah, it was just it's cool to off, honestly. Yeah, I guess we'll get into the last chunk of the movie now. So what do you think about them bringing everybody back, but not being able to celebrate in that, and them just getting fucked again. And Thanos reappears.
It's a bit quick, and it's interesting because it does feel right mostly. So like as I recall, like they get back after all this, and then you have the sad moment where it was like, where's Natasha? She didn't make it. And then Hawkeye's cell phone rings, and it's his wife. And then almost immediately after, as I recall, Thanos like shoots the Avengers studio with a bomb or whatever, and then they fight in the wreckage.
Yeah.
In that it feels almost like you immediately get submerged into like necessary movie climax, and it's a huge battle with 1,000 people. But for the most part, they do a very good job. The Russos are good at this, I think, with grounding their choreography and making it seem kind of more followable rather than the typical CGI spectacle. Even though it is a CGI spectacle, you always follow the characters and the individual fights in a way that I think's pretty well done.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, just they get close quarters. I mean, like the same close quarters combat of Iron Man and Captain America fighting each other in Civil War is kind of replicated just with 4 characters, with Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and Thanos fighting each other. And that duel that they have is amazing, the 3-on-1.
Yeah, you get that. You get Captain America or Captain Marvel shows up and fights him a bit. And then I don't know if Hulk ever does. I want to see Hulk kind of get his retribution and get his balls back and fight Thanos, but I don't remember that happening, at least like extensively. Maybe.
No, he doesn't. He actually doesn't really do anything. I think they just say like, oh, he's banged up from wishing on the glove. It's whatever. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and it's like it's logical, but for a movie where it's like they fucking time travel and there's a talking raccoon, like I kind of like Hulk to get to be a badass in the final fight.
Yeah, which I guess that's the kind of the detriment of Professor Hulk, where they kind of just got rid of that just got rid of that for good. Because like, yeah, he has Hulk's body, but he doesn't have like the rage and the personality to like really get in there and do that like we would expect. So again, they just kind of wrote off Hulk and was like, all right, his character's complete. We did our homework. Right?
Yeah, it's true, and it's not really a huge point or anything, but it is something.
Hulk has never been one of the main characters.
Yeah,
I feel like they wanted Hulk to be one of the main characters back in 2008. It just didn't pan out that way. So as time went on, that did not work.
Yeah. I mean, we already talked about the girl power scene.
We sure did.
With the main battle, I mean, I don't think there's quite as much to discuss, oddly enough, with this one as opposed to the previous one, Infinity War. It's actually kind of more of a straightforward battle.
I mean, it's got amazing moments and choreography. I mean, when Captain America is all alone, standing up to basically another killer, another Hydra, whatever the hell you want to call it, another bully, I guess you could say. And then everybody else comes through the portals, and that is forever going to be remembered as a iconic, like, I am your father, a scene. That's going to be in the echoes of our brains in movie history forever. I'm pretty damn sure about that.
It's very possible. So yeah, like yeah. I definitely don't want to put the climax of the movie down because it is well done. I'm not knocking it. It's just more straightforward in what it is, which is a huge, CGI fan service spectacle, and it's well done in that regard.
And we have to imagine that like it's not the same Thanos that they're fighting. They're not fighting the super wise, cunning, somewhat sympathetic Thanos that they were in the last movie. They're fighting just a dick at this point. So, in a way, it's like, oh, it's not the same Thanos, so it's not as compelling. This movie isn't the movie that needs to be compelling. This movie is the one that needs resolution. So, in a way, it all fits. And it was about Thanos in the first movie. Now it's about the heroes coming up on top. So the way they do that and having two different time versions of the same villain actually works out fairly well.
I could be remembering wrong, but isn't that like what you said a bit ago? Isn't that like one of the last lines with Thanos where he says like, "I am eternal," and then Iron Man says, "No, you're just a dick." And then
he basically says, I think line is, "I am inevitable." Like he's basically saying the cataclysm, the universe getting destroyed, like he is going to win, basically. And then that's when he says, "I'm Iron Man."
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he doesn't call him a dick.
Which is a corny, but albeit earned and really fantastic callback to the end of the first movie.
Yeah, it works. And then you watch him die.
Yeah, so I want to know, did you cry at the end of this movie at all?
No, I didn't.
You did?
No. It was sad, but I wasn't like crying.
Yeah, but see, I'm usually a crier in movies, so the end of this one took me for a loop.
I get that. I wish that I was. I'm not like one of those dudes that's like, no, I didn't cry. I'm usually like the exact opposite, where it's like either A, I am, or B, I wish that I was. I've been reading like dopamine addiction and how like with cell phones and immediate like dopamine receptions that we get all throughout the day, we become addicted to it. And I actually think I'm addicted to the dopamine, like if it's even the same chemical, but I'm addicted to like movies that make you cry or songs that like just pulverize you emotionally. I think I'm addicted to that kind of rush.
Yeah, I can kind of feel that. It is a certain kind of rush. And I think, the more you have bought into the series, maybe the more intense that action was at the end. But yeah, it was pretty rough to see Iron Man die, and it was a risk to do so. I mean, honestly, I feel like going into the movie, I was expecting Captain America to do the typical Captain America thing and self-sacrifice, but then the character who, struggle a lot to learn to do that, he sacrifices instead, and then Captain America actually gets to go back and live his life. So, I mean, just in virtue of what happens to our two main characters in the end, it was a lot of character growth. So I thought that was the best way that they handled that.
I agree. And what really hits with the Iron Man thing, at least for me, is that he had so much to live for with his family.
Oh, yeah. It really sucks.
Like, it'd be one thing if, like if a Cap died. It actually, like, it would be sad, but just be like, okay, well, he didn't have anybody, and he made out with his niece, and that was kind of weird. But, like, he's got some friends. But then, like, Tony is like, well, he's got a daughter.
Yeah, no, that's totally why it's, like, earworthy for me, too. And it's like, Spider-Man is like a surrogate son at this point too, and like their little interactions in this final fight were sweet, and it's like, oh man, it does really blow. But it wouldn't have gotten the tears out of you in the same way, and out of a lot of people if it had been Cap dying. I think people would have just been like, oh yeah, that's the Cap thing to do. Salute and goodbye.
Also, you get that great visual of the, I forget what it's called now, the thing in his chest. Just like that light dimming.
The arc reactor, I think.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
No, yeah, I know. That panning shot of that down the river and then across the rest of the cast of the characters just is very emotionally resonant. It's really good. Sometimes this movie is very smart and knows exactly what it's going for and what it's doing. It's weird because like I feel like I'm a sucker for good endings, so I feel like I like Avengers Endgame more than Infinity War. But at the same time, it's like might technically more problems with Endgame, and I respect that and critics who recognize that. At the same time, saying something is better and saying something is more my favorite is not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I don't always even like, I'll usually use quote unquote objective standards just to describe a stigma or the general consensus or whatever, or typically if I can kind of agree with it at least. But I don't really believe in that criticism for the most part. At least I don't like it. I'm not, even if it does exist, I'm not interested in quote unquote objective criticism. But I definitely think that there's an argument to be had between these two particular movies. And for me, there's a consistency of Infinity War, like you said. And then like the highs and lows of Endgame, the highs go higher and the lows go lower for me, I would say.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
But I think both are good movies. I think both do what they are trying to do very well.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that as well. I guess just kind of for one more intricate plot discussion, what do you actually think about Captain America going back in time and then growing old and then leaving the shield and all the stuff that he ends up doing?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So, I mean, him going back at the end of the movie, that's a really satisfying ending for him, and we're happy for him because it was always bittersweet him being around. He was always a tragic character who was out of time. However, there is kind of like that plot point that everybody brings up. It's a common joke where it's like, so did Captain America just let 9/11 happen? Did Captain America that whole thing? Is a little silly, but it's kind of like you're thinking too much about a comic book movie at that point.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a couple of like comedy sketches and shit on YouTube that kind of explore that idea, and it's pretty funny. Yeah, no, while it certainly opens up plot holes, and honestly, the plot of this entire movie opens up plot holes out the ass everywhere you go. Yeah. So I think the good thing is to just not think about it. Just, if you're trying to make sense of the time travel and where characters end up where they are, maybe don't. One thing that I really got a kick out of discussing with my friends and my brother when we saw this opening night was like, okay, Captain America returned all the stones. So that means he returned the Soul Stone to his old nemesis, Red Skull. I want to know how that went.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I
when you think
imagine
about it, like, that has to happen.
A lot of times pass, though. We don't know the spiritual growth the Red Skull has gone through in the last 50, 70 years or whatever.
Maybe they just hung out for a little bit, had some lunch, and then you'd on his time journey.
Yeah, Red gets to give that classic villain line, "You're not so different, you and I. I've made a lot of growth in the last couple decades." And
Jesus Christ. It's like, man, you were a Nazi, but like seem to have mellowed out here on this fucking planet a billion light years away.
Actually,
I see you now.
I wish that we had an audience because I would totally commission this. And so, the movie, have you ever heard of the movie Seventh Seal? Ingmar Bergman?
I think I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
It's like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey parodies this super famous image of a man, Max von Sydow, playing a game of chess with death. And it's got like the pale, cloaked version of death. Very famous representation. Well, if somebody could just paint or draw Captain America playing chess with a Red Skull in that weird Chaos Emerald Island that they're on, I would probably pay up to $5 for a copy.
Absolutely, it would look awesome. We'll chip in on it together, Todd.
That's it. Okay, I'll draw Captain America if you draw Red Skull. And
that'll turn out well. That's the thumbnail for this video now. There you go.
If only we had a budget, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh my god. Well, that's funny. But yeah, I mean, those are the kinds of conversations that this movie generates. Like, this movie is just full of like, you can talk about this movie, especially after it first came out, which is funny because at the time of us recording this, it's been almost exactly a year since Avengers Endgame came out for the first time.
Wow, it's really only been a year.
Yeah, it feels like a long time for multiple reasons. But
Yeah.
after you first saw this movie, like, you could talk with your friends about all the shit that happened for like 4 hours and not cover the same topic twice.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of shit in this movie.
Absolutely. And it's just, I don't think we'll ever truly forget the movie freaking events that Infinity War and Endgame were. Just like 2 Aprils, 2 years in a row. Just like the hype was always palpable. Movies kind of delivered on that hype in some ways better than you expected. There's little stumbles in these movies here and there. The fact that we live in a universe, a timeline, if you will, where these superhero movies like actually succeeded in telling a saga this coherently is honestly kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I've been thinking about it the last few minutes. The parallels between this and X-Men in terms of like Days of Future Past. We talked about like the time travel and stuff, or we talked about it with Infinity War just in terms of juggling characters, but the time travel. But then also in this, when we talked about the river and that stuff at the end, and the ending of this being kind of somber, I said like Logan.
Yeah.
And I was like, I bet that they probably did take some influence on what worked in Logan for the emotional moments in this. Because why wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, I totally hear you, and I love Days of Future Past and Logan. I think there's a lot of comparisons of Days of Future Past and Infinity War in a way, not the actual time travel because that's Endgame, but just how like action packed and multiple cast of characters doing multiple different things in Days of Future Past and Infinity War. Then Logan and Endgame both having kind of that emotional resonance that people really credit them for.
Yeah. So what would you give Endgame?
It's tough. It's tough. I think probably when there's always that honeymoon period, and that's usually when I review movies because I want to get the review out. When it's still relevant, people want to read it. Probably gave it a perfect score because I was the movie made me cry like 5 times. A joke, and I just remembered having a freaking blast in the theater the first time. But going back over it and thinking about it objectively, whatever the hell objectively means, I think I would give it a 9 as well. Because like you said, like Infinity War is probably more consistent, but I'm a sucker for emotions and endings and all that crap. So, the highs being higher and the lows being a little lower, it's like, kind of evens out. So I guess I'd give it a 9 as well.
Yeah, that's totally fair. This one's really tough for me to judge as well. Whereas I'd say that like Infinity War is like 3 hours and it's like, maybe 10 minutes of it at the absolute worst is like kind of iffy. This one's just a bit more complex on many levels. Where like entire plot lines I'm not totally sold on, but I'm not against either. Or like character arcs I'm not totally with, but I'm not totally against. There's a lot of mixed emotions, but generally I really enjoyed it. When it's its best, I liked it as much, if not more than Endgame, or more than Infinity War. But there was a lot more buts in this one, including Captain America's. So it's like
exactly. Well, you gotta raise up a letter grade there.
Yeah,
that as well.
Yeah, it gets an A for ass.
Yeah, it gets an A for ass.
No, I give it like
A for America.
An 8 to 8.5, depending on my mood, just because some of the hindrances for it do hurt it for me, but it's not like it's that much worse. Like, it sounds almost negative in comparison. It's not. It's just that the things that are clunky for me are just clunkier.
Oh yeah, no, I totally hear you. I've heard some people who actually like Endgame and don't like who like Infinity War or don't like Endgame much at all, and like there's not a whole lot of you know, differences though, because I feel like people generally like them both. It's just which one's your favorite? It's kind of a toss up for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, but in conclusion, I mean, they're both good movies. They're both very satisfying. And, hopefully it's a direction similar to what Marvel does in the future. I'm not really interested in anything going on over there because I'm just so burnt out. But Sam Raimi's doing Doctor Strange 2, so I'll probably have to see that.
Yeah, I heard about that. I'm in the same boat where I kind of have superhero fatigue at this point in time, and none of the TV projects or movie projects, sound super compelling to me. Just knowing that the Infinity Saga is over and it is complete, which technically includes Spider-Man Far From Home, which I thought was pretty good, and it was kind of like a nice epilogue to Avengers Endgame. Just knowing that that's complete is kind of enough for me. So if there's a good movie, if there's a good Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or a good Spider-Man 3, I'll see it and probably enjoy it. But I'm not holding myself to seeing every fucking one of these anymore either.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I never have, but I'm kind of keeping that same approach. It's just that right now, none of the projects are personally just appealing to me. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'll watch anything Sam Raimi makes, so I'll at least give that one a shot. But
No, you will.
That
maybe we'll talk about that when the time comes.
Oh, that'd be a perfect episode.
I can see it now.
All right, are you ready to wrap this one up?
All right. Well, this has been Eric Savinsky and
Todd Crawford.
We are Too Cool for the Comic Shop. Guys, next time.